We forgot to film one of those like fun pre-intros before the show where we're like, "Hey, real talk. Let's let's act like men this time." Yeah.
I mean, how could you spend 5 minutes with him and not want to strike him?
I wouldn't say it's one of our 5 best, but if is it adequate? Was I getting the improvisational response to my humor that I expected? No.
I gave you 6 or 7 chuckles.
Some guy made us these.
Whoa,
One of our super fans made it.
I have to carry this around the train station now. Hey, everybody.
You ever been to the Newark Penn Station?
No, I have not. I don't think so.
Imagine if an AIDS molecule was a train station. That's what it's like.
It's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We're done here.
Well, would you believe it? The UFC doesn't have a light heavyweight champion. And on December 10th of this year, the final pay-per-view of the calendar year 2022, we are going to crown him. It might be Magomed Ankalaev. It might be Jan Blachowicz. But it won't be the guys it was originally supposed to be. Good thing we have these guys to do real talk like men do for the UFC 282 pregame preview. That's Brian Campbell, Chuck Mindenhall, the Iceman himself. I am Luke Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, gents.
Don't bury the lead here, Luke. When you speak of crowning on a day like this,
Oh, man.
you must be referring to when you Murigliata'd that restroom over there and just shut that shit down.
I
right?
butterbeaned it. I absolutely demolished that commode.
Okay.
How we doing, boys?
Good, man. I see he's infected you right away, though, like men do. He's got you saying that now.
I think it's actually pretty stupid, but
Okay.
it's just part of the tradition.
adopted it.
It's a
Okay, that's
decent
okay.
selling T-shirt.
Yes, it is.
Brian, why are you wearing the world's stupidest socks?
Because I'm not allowed to put this chaotic, indifferent piece of food into my body because of what it's done to my liver, excuse me, but I can flaunt it and wear it just the same. Because Luke, dealing with me, I'm a hot dog. You never know what you're going to get, but you do know it'll be wiener shaped, right?
Here we go.
it'll
That
just
Delta 8 is reporting.
yeah.
How many Delta 8s are sitting in your tummy right now?
Not a fair accusation at all.
Actually, real fair. I'm the one who gave them to you.
Feeling these margaritas, Brian Campbell.
Do you know where that it comes from?
Is this?
You were there when we were.
I was there.
Yeah, when I was. I had a few too many margaritas.
I'm drinking some afternoon dad seltzer. What are you rocking out over there?
Just got some kind of IPA.
Okay.
Soapy IPA.
Looks like I'll be doing chemicals during this show.
I just can't do the boozing. It just kills me now.
It's a pregame. Come on, man.
Buddy, I have the boozing, and life is just never the same anymore.
Yeah.
I can't sleep. It's the whole thing. But all right, here we are. Last pay-per-view of the year. Before we even talk about UFC 282, which, by the way, is an interesting card.
Yeah.
I think is a fair way to put it.
I wouldn't call it top heavy.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't say
not,
I've been waiting for it.
wouldn't call it Dolly Parton.
Man,
wouldn't do that.
Wow.
They tried so hard, too, to make this a big
But hold on.
show.
Let's
right?
review for a second here if we just can. How was 2022 for the UFC? In particular, the pay-per-view offerings. What do you think?
Steady.
Yeah, I think
Not
it was
spectacular. Not spectacular.
par. You know what I mean? I felt
Wasn't
like
bad.
there was good ones. Yeah, there were some really
some
good
loaded
ones.
ass cards.
Yeah, there were
right?
some loaded ass cards. There were some that were, just okay. But I think that's standard, right? Like we see some of that every year.
Coming off of like the pandemic restrictions where most of them have been lifted, not entirely, but for the most part, life is reasonably back to normal. Would you say it's fair that they had about what you could expect given the circumstances? Because I'm told they're going to go on the road much more in 2023.
Yeah, that's what-
They went on the road somewhat this year, but not a whole lot, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah. It was weird because they were the first, right? Like they were if you're talking about all the cards, the fight nights and everything, they were the first to want to get back out there, put on shows through the pandemic, all that stuff. We talked about this a lot. Yet they're the kind of last to come out of that as well with the Apex and all that. I'm sure you guys have talked about this as a bizarre sort of thing. I think, if anything, the Apex shows seemed outdated at some point along the way. They started to seem weird, like out of place. But I understand why they were doing them. So I hope they're kind of like, as we go into 2023, I kind of hope they phase them out. I don't know if you guys...
They're not going to phase them out.
No,
They're not going to phase them out completely, but I hope that they make them kind of more like...
Seldom.
Yeah,
It's
seldom.
more likely they phase out the fans and journalists so that Zuck can have his way.
That is true.
But if we're talking about
Jesus.
the pay-per-view offerings as a whole, look, 2022 was it a good year for the UFC? I say it was a very good to great year. But with that said, we didn't get John Jones or Conor McGregor back in a pay-per-view main event or at all. So when I do look at the effects of the ESPN era, where something we talked about big during 2020, where what's the motivation for Dana, no matter what, to keep putting on as many cards? Well, that's $750 million or so guaranteed from ESPN if they meet that. We've argued that that could lead to where the onus isn't exactly on the UFC every time out to put forth or market a pay-per-view to a certain level if they're getting paid a minimum that's so strong. With that said, I don't think it was a bad year for pay-per-view, but it was more across the board of like, what's the hardcore matchup you want to see the most? Oh, it's Oliveira versus Makhachev. It's coming up next. We got a lot of those great matchups. We didn't get that, a lot of those times where you can knock on the door to the mainstream, though, and pull them in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need the stars that you have to incubate and build up and hope they keep winning. And are we in between right now in crossover stars? That's a topic for another day, right?
That is a thing that I think they're struggling with in general. Like, we were talking about this before. Is Israel Adesanya, right? Like, is he a guy who's an actual star, or is he kind of a guy that was like the old stars, where in the bubble he's a huge star, but outside of he's not as transcendent? I feel like there are a couple of those types. You know what I mean? So it's we don't have that slam dunk who's fighting twice a year, and every media outlet in the world is basically doing some feature on this because they want to.
That 2016 Rousey McGregor was unbelievable, really.
Lesnar too that year.
Lesnar as well. Wow, I forgot about that. Lesnar as well.
I almost think it can't be replicated. I have a hard time seeing how it can be.
Not anytime soon. Yeah. And they got pretty close with Nate against Hamza, but then that kind of fell apart, but didn't. So that was a weird one as well.
I mean, okay, without having done any research, and we didn't for this specific question.
That's par for the
off the top of your head of feeling quick reaction, what were the 3 biggest UFC fights of the year in terms of that brought in the most potential crossover interest? Just off the top of your head, what were those matchups?
276. International Fight Week.
Okay, yes.
Which had what?
So that was the Volk and Holloway 3. Izzy and Cannonier, and then Strickland and Pineda were on it as well. There's some other ones,
I guess if your answer just off the top there is sort of a loaded card rather than one specific bout, right?
I think that's more like it.
Max Volk 3 did have legitimate star power. We needed to see it. But like off the top of your head, I'm struggling to pick up what were commercially the biggest potential people had to see moments.
G card probably came closest in terms of what we're dealing with.
Pineda versus Adesanya.
They had some weird ones too. It's like they went back on the road and they went to Salt Lake City with Kamaru. It was like, okay, that's a
ends up being like the most ridiculous,
historic in many ways. Yeah. So in light of all of that, where does 282 fit into it? Is it representative of the year? Am I reaching for a narrative that isn't there? How do you assess 282 in light of the year?
I think they wanted to load this card up. That's what I think happened. Obviously, the talk was, and I think that they kept things in holding for a long time as they tried to see if John Jones could return.
Yeah. This would have been Jones and Ngannou under.
It would have been that.
Plans,
and I mean,
right?
obviously, that would have been a big event. That would have been the event we're trying to find.
That would be a huge event.
But instead, you get a card with a couple of light heavyweight showcase at the top, and then one of those falls off, and now it's this, which is, if you're a diehard, I know that you probably like this card. There's some good stylistic matchups.
I don't love it, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, there's some intriguing fights, I guess you could say, like that of guys. There's that first one with Bryce Mitchell, like undefeated guys. Mm-hmm. That's fun. Those types of fights, but in terms of the thing you're talking about, what's going to like come hither the casual audience, that's not happening.
Well, this is lacking the star power of the main event because of injuries that we're about to get into, but it's also, to be honest, lacking a secondary or even a third punch of like, what are the 2 to 3 things that are going to get me to buy this pay-per-view? This pay-per-view is lacking all of that, to be very fair. So can we start at the top of how this title fight and main event fell apart and what UFC ended up deciding to replace it? Because from the standpoint of fanfare, it was it a worst case scenario? It kind of was.
So let's go through it one time. Let's set the table. Okay. So, and again, if I'm mispronouncing this, which is a decent chance I am, we did look it up, and I had someone send this video to me.
Oh, you're not going to
This was after the commode.
But this is true. I had someone send this video to me being like, this was approved by the fighter themselves.
Wow.
That's why I said it.
So it's Adesanya.
No. It's never been Adesanya. Well, I mean, what are you doing?
Making you angry. I mean, outright
and he does this. He goes, he can't say Poirier. He goes, Poirier. He just can't. My man's got like all kinds of issues.
I can't say Poirier, or is it because,
So, Jiri Prochazka is, I know it doesn't look that way. It's spelled Jiri, but it's got all kinds of squiggly lines on the top of it. I am told it is pronounced Jiri Prochazka.
This is the ever-morphing first name. It was first Jiri, then it was Yuri. Yeah. Now it's Yeezy.
Yeah, it's Yeezy.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can call him Prochazka.
Okay.
It was supposed to be that, who was the existing champion, fighting Glover Teixeira in a rematch of whatever their ability to pull on pay-per-view, one of the most fantastic light heavyweight title fights you're just ever going to see.
Maybe the fight of the year.
Maybe fight of the year candidate. They were going to do that. Prochazka gets a terrible shoulder injury. We still don't know the full details of it. We were told it is horrific.
1 year is the expectation, correct?
Dude,
At least.
okay, but like, I bet it might be longer than that. If what they're saying is true, dude, shoulder injuries are bare minimum 6 to 9 months.
So the story is that he went to the UFC to say, I want to give up the title, but they wouldn't have kept it on anyway when you're out that long.
So he says to them, I'm going to be out this long. I'm going to drop the title. So they go to Glover and they say, Glover, do you want to fight Ankalaev on this date? And he says, well, no, I don't want to fight Ankalaev on this date. I want to fight him on that date in Brazil.
Well, he said, I'll fight
him, but he doesn't want to fight him on that date. He wanted more time.
He said, I'll fight Jan on that date in a rematch. UFC said, no, we don't want to sell that. It has to be Ankalaev. He said,
the first one wasn't very competitive.
Yeah, he said, well, Ankalaev's a southpaw. Let's do it January in Brazil. They said no.
They said no. So then they went to Ankalaev, Magomed Ankalaev, and then Jan Blachowicz, and they just made that fight, to which they have still said Glover gets next. We will see if that ends up actually happening. So our main event, in other words, is Magomed Ankalaev taking on Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz, of course, the former champion. Magomed Ankalaev, a surging contender.
No disrespect. This is the least sexiest way it could have gone. No disrespect. This is a great fight. I want to see if Ankalaev is of this legit level.
Well, here's my point. Here's my point. There is a way that this fight could definitely go boring. But I got to tell you, I like the fight.
Yes.
I do like
this
fight.
I like the fight, but let's frame it this way. To save the pay-per-view, and I'm sure they probably called up an action hero and said, what are you doing? Can we make a makeshift, throw together fight, a BMF
I thought you were
fight?
for sure going to make a Daniel Cormier fat joke about him
so
jumping in at
unnecessary. I mean, he has been enjoying the afterlife, though. Let's be honest about that, right?
He's getting big.
Seriously, they didn't break glass and put Chimaev in their last minute against anybody, even though maybe they called people to try that. Is this acceptable? Jan versus Ankalaev, great fight. Your pay-per-view title main event.
Well, if anything, it's emblematic, like you were talking about. I do feel like since the ESPN deal and everything that's been going on, there's less emphasis on trying to go through hoops at the end to throw something crazy up there. I feel like they're resolved and content to go with something like this from time to time. I know this isn't ideal. I do agree with you. It's probably the least sexy thing they could have done for this card, but at least it was there. At least they could do that. They didn't have to find two guys, you know what I mean? Like they didn't have to find two guys and put them on a card with that kind of notice. So I think that they got the best case in terms of the actual division, it kind of tying in, because that was going to be it was going to be a title eliminator fight anyway. At the interim, it sucks in general because, Glover, I feel bad for him, man. He's my neighbor, this is a guy who
he was outspoken against the UFC.
He was actually, and I think that he's rightfully so, right? Like he
doesn't do that often.
No, he doesn't.
Do you think
he wouldn't have done that at all like last year? I mean, I just feel like now he's in a whole different space.
Luke Thomas, did the UFC make the right move here? Under the guise of you could have had Glover, Jan, too, for the vacant belt, and two former champions, nobody complained. Is taking Ankalaev, who arguably might be the last man standing among the three of them, is this the better move for the promotion?
These questions are always the wrong questions. It's not really did they do the right thing or the wrong thing. This is a power struggle. And the entity with the most leverage and the most power is simply going to win out. To me, Glover's request is entirely fair. Like, I'll fight the guy, I just need more time.
Right.
Or I'll fight this other guy who they don't really want me to fight. But, okay, I just need more time. And the UFC, everyone knows their number one thing, Chuck, is making sure all the trains leave the station on time.
Right.
Product gets shipped. It arrives when it says it's going to arrive. It's full. It's ready to go. Good or bad, it at least gets there when it's supposed to get there, and that's how they get their contractual revenue when they used to have a much more volatile business model. And so the question is, did they make the right choice? For who?
Right.
For themselves? Yes. For Glover? No, they didn't. Right?
But even though there's extra side items on this menu to get us excited, there's Paddy returning. There's that great Topuria, Bryce Mitchell fight. There's a few other of those. Oh, shit, Rosas, we'll get to him. Yeah, I want to see him too. There isn't that secondary, third, or really even first hook in your skin of, I have to shell out $80 for this card. But they're in a position, true or false, they don't need that anymore. That's not the game they're fighting anymore.
Pay-per-view is not nearly as significant as it once was, but it is still a significant driver of revenue.
But aren't you? This is a way of me summarizing and saying, I'm surprised they didn't break glass and get, again, Chandler against somebody last minute, or just something
they
crazy.
Partly wanted to do, as you indicated, they were thinking about doing the new middleweight champion in Alex Pereira versus Khamzat Chimaev. That was a thing that they wanted to do, and there was a little bit of social media back and forth. But it's like, dude, there's no fucking way Pereira was going to make weight. It's just not possible. You can't have a guy that big who blew back up, I'm sure,
Yes.
get
What's
right
that, like
back down to
225 right now walking
again?
around? Isn't he walking around at like 220 or something?
Yes, I mean it's and even if he could do it, that is not fucking healthy.
a big dude, man.
That's just you. It's just not realistic. You can't do it. So I understand that. Listen, if they could have pulled that off, that would have been remarkable. But it's just not in the cards. I'm going to go back to it. Everyone is kind of poo-pooing the methodology by which we got to this fight, and I get that. I really get it. It's fair. It's entirely relevant. But I do think if you focus on it too much, dude, Ankalaev was going to get to this point one way or the other.
That's the factor, right? They didn't want him off the card. That became clear.
And so here he is now in the main event. Blachowicz is, I would consider, a very tough test. But Ankalaev, we talked about this the last time you were here. Certain guys are inevitable. Dude, this motherfucker was.
But I think that factors in. I really do. I think what you just said is exactly right. If you're going to cut somebody out of the card, it can't be him.
Yeah.
It's the guy coming up. And honestly, in that particular division, I know we have Yeezy, Prochazka. We have him. He's kind of
Prochazka.
Easy. I thought we said no anti-Semitism in this.
we have.
We didn't have to make a rule for that, BC. You could just not do it.
So Prochazka was a new blood within that division, right? And we've had some movement in that division, but there's not been a lot. You know what I mean? So when you get a guy who's that good and he's coming up, I think that we see it, and I think people see it. I don't think they want to say, no, we're going to prevent you from going where we think you're going anyway. So I think that the inevitability that's where it factors in. They're like, this guy's going to be here anyway. They didn't want to get rid of him. And that's a big it's a showcase fight for him now, isn't it? Like, this is the time they're going to put him on and be like, this is the future of the division. This is the guy to go through now.
Difficult question no one wants me to ask, and you definitely won't want to answer, Luke. Does Prochazka's shoulder getting effed up and giving away the title now make Vadim Nemkov the best light heavyweight in the world again until Ankalaev potentially wins it?
I was just gonna say that. Like, dude, they're gonna crown a champion here, assuming it's not a draw or some kind of weird shit.
Which it could be.
Like, no one on earth, even if you think, let's say Ankalaev wins and he wins in a devastating fashion, is anyone going to say decidedly that's the best light heavyweight on earth based on that performance? I'm sure some might, of course, but it would hardly be consensus because you have so many outside figures. Vadim Nemkov, obviously in Bellator, but what's going to happen with Glover? What's going to happen with Prochazka? Prochaz? I can't say it quite.
Say Yeezy.
Yeezy. With Yeezy Prochazka. It's hard to really say when they defend. Yeah. So they would have done an interim title, but to his credit, he gave up the fucking belt, which, by the way, I got to say, speaks enormously to his character as an athlete, 100%. As a person.
Yeah, I was trying to say that earlier. Yes, that is, I think when you mentioned this, I think you might have even tweeted this right away, that those types of injuries can take forever to actually recover from. And you may not come back in the same form, realistically, though today's doctors are very good comparatively to the day. But, yeah, man, I think that's true. That's probably the way it goes.
Does he need Tommy John surgery?
No, I don't know what it is. He hasn't really said exactly what it is.
We don't know what it is, but again, I've talked about this before. I've had shoulder surgery, and the basic idea to think about is the shoulder joint is the most mobile joint in your body. If you think about your knee can only go really one way. Your elbow, just the same thing, but your shoulder can do all kinds of stuff. As a result of that, it is also the one with the least amount of stability. And once that stability is compromised, per this TJ Dillashaw conversation about the shoulder going in and out, dude, they got to stitch it real tight to get it working again. Are you having some issues over there?
Sorry, I was sitting on a water bottle.
Could you be louder? Curious.
You sure that was a water bottle?
And so it's like, dude, I remember I had a buddy of mine who had labrum surgery, and he was an athlete, and he got back to the mats, and I want to say about 7 or 8 months, and that was the fastest I've seen. Took me about a year to feel normal again.
I think that it does speak to his character, like your whole thing. I think that he probably heard what it is, and he knows the extent of his injury. I'm sure he's been informed, and it's confident too, right? Like, you're pretty confident if you're doing that. If you're saying, I think he really believes in himself on that level. But if you're saying like, hey, I'm not gonna hold up traffic. I'm just gonna step aside and I'll be back to reclaim it when I'm ready. Yeah. That's pretty cool, man.
How long was the recovery on your torn labia?
Oh, you're so fucking stupid. I mean, doing vagina jokes, really? Is that what we're doing?
He was holding tight there until he could get that in.
Try to sprinkle in a little real talk. We can get back to the fight.
Like men do.
Yeah.
All right. BC, where is Jan in this whole conversation?
In a very advantageous
I feel like everyone's just
right
forgetting about him.
Right. Bounce back had would you say a solid ass win to remind us that he's still. Who was it against? I'm trying to remember off the top. Against Rakic, to remind us exactly who he is and where he still belongs. So he was already in the pecking order to get a shot to reinvent himself again. Remember, he's pushing 40. This was a hell of a turn in his career to go from sort of every man in the division to suddenly the champion. Now, I mean, he almost got Glover. What would have been nice on a rematch for the title. But even though it's going to be an uphill battle for any of these guys now that Ankalaev's ready to truly test himself against the best. But Jan has a way to not have to beat Glover or Jiri. Not saying Ankalaev's any easier. He's not. But he's got a way to now bounce right back in there and regain the title. And I think if you're Jan, you look at that Glover loss as the worst night of his career, like by far. Like everything went wrong for him. And even said afterwards, I don't know what was, the training camp was right, but I just came out there on fight night and I had nothing.
At his age, too.
That happens.
Yeah, I mean, but at his age, after he did that, I was like, when he was going into that Rakic fight, I was like, will he show up and be diminished, just because sometimes after you've held the title and all that, you've realized a lot of things in your career that nobody
Rakic got
expected.
injured, right?
And he did get injured. It was like, I think like second or third round, like he wasn't able to go. Right, I think that's kind of.
I can argue. We saw enough from Jan before the injury where it's like he's still that dude. He's still that.
Well,
dude.
that's what. So yes, we are sleeping on him a little bit because I feel like he kind of showed that he's the same guy. He's ever dangerous. We know what he can do. I know he beats up a lot of middleweights, but like I think if he lands his power, he's got
him yielding the belt to Glover. It was almost too easy. It was almost like perfect stars aligned. Jeremy Lin and Tim Tebow, Glover Teixeira, hell or high water is going to have his moment, and he had it. Shout out to him. But looking back, it's like, damn, Jan took the knee and bowed down, and we had a title change.
Yeah,
it didn't feel like he had to go through the normal hell to lose that. Now, credit for Glover, got him down, got him position, subbed him the hell out of there. I'm happy for Jan to work himself back in. The luck turned out in his favor. But is this all a setup to still get hammered out by Ankalaev at the end of the day? So, Luke Thomas, the most important question we can ask about the light heavyweight division right now is how freaking good is Ankalaev? We talk about hammers in a cupboard behind us, and right now, Ankalaev, Islam, I mean, all these guys, they got large hammers, okay? How large is Ankalaev's piece, though? Like, is he ready to take over in a Makhachev-type way this division?
Very sexual drug.
He can't have a human conversation without penises and vagina
He's worked them in like both
as
of
the
those
prism
2 minutes
is the prism in which to forward the conversation. To answer the question about how good Ankalaev is, not how large his Johnson is.
I meant the hammer of potential that he carries.
Oh, the hammer of potential. Oh, yes.
Who's the dirty mind then?
The proverbial hammer of potential. Yeah, he's real fucking good. He's very, very good. And he did have the first debut loss to Paul Craig.
He threw that fight.
Which, by the way, he threw the fight?
He lost in the last few seconds. I think he was a heavy favorite. I think his camp was like, let's load up on money right away.
Yeah, the last
lose
bit
this
there.
one, then we'll go on our 9-5.
Paul Craig though is crafty. He's crafty that way.
Their camp may not understand the subtlety of that joke. You may be getting a phone call. You know what I mean?
And then he did have a very ho-hum performance against Thiago Santos, where I think he was trying to get some round time in and trying to be very careful.
Maheta also a motherfucker.
But then you saw what he did to Anthony Smith, and you see what he did to Iwan Kutelaba, not once but twice.
That ground and pound on Anthony Smith was other level, man. Like because remember he tried to pull guard, he had a hurt
ankle.
Hurt ankle. He tries to pull guard, but the punches that he was landing. There are times in this game where you went still, like we're like, oh my God, those are heavy shots.
He's
like
accurate. He's not afraid of contact, but he does. Here's the thing. He reminds me a little bit in terms of sensibility, not so much the fight game. He reminds me in terms of sensibility of Islam Makhachev, where like defensively, dude, my man makes really sound decisions. It is hard to beat a guy like that. It is so fucking hard to beat a guy who doesn't make a lot of defensive errors.
That's true.
And is good everywhere.
He's everywhere.
Patient too. Like, he's just kind of, he'll settle for the leg kicks. He'll chop you down that way and then come up high and full. You know what I mean? Like he'll just wait you out before he strikes like that. So
he's in good shape. He's young.
Yeah, the 5 rounds thing
only benefits him. He's not going to gas.
Yeah.
So we talked about again earlier in this show and then in previous ones about who is inevitable. Maybe he's not I'm not saying he's John Jones inevitable, but you saw him coming up. You're like, ooh, my man's going to be a real big problem for this division. On the other hand, BC. And Chuck, you can feel this one too. We talk about all the time. Again, what is the right answer? Everyone else can decide for themselves. But they're going to have a UFC champion who's got a direct line to Kadyrov, a direct line to Ramzan Kadyrov.
Who? Gaethje, Usman, or Cejudo? Which one?
Well, none of those are champion anymore. And by the way,
kudos to you for mentioning it. I feel like some people don't mention this.
I don't even know. Well, here's the thing. I don't even know what the point is of mentioning it anymore because no one ever cares.
Colby's
about
got
anything.
a direct line to Donald.
Say again?
Colby has a direct line to Donald,
First of all, it's the Donald.
Yeah,
Pay
the horse,
respect,
yeah.
heathen.
Did you see when Jake's horse took a bite out of crime on Luke?
I
That was
did
great.
see that actually.
Fucking euthanize that bitch.
Oh, come on.
Turn him into
Blue
glue,
If you
motherfucker.
had to eat horse, you'd rather eat like a Kentucky Derby winner than like some random.
Dude, that was not a
right?
Kentucky Derby winner. That was a pony.
Yo, I would slice up the Donald and put some ketchup on that bitch.
I bet you would. I bet you would, heathen. Anyway, questions of inevitability about talent level. I think he's going to win this fight.
Yeah.
I think he's going to win it. I won't say easily, but I don't think he's going to have to like rally to win, right? Is that
No, I agree
ring
with
true?
you. And I think the reason this fight is intact is for that reason. I think that the UFC thinks that he'll go in there and do that. And it's, you're only setting the division up for more possibility and bigger fights, right? Like if he's the guy, because I feel like he's been that guy, even going before the Smith fight, we were talking about him. So I think that's the scenario. So I think it's set up basically for him to win.
BC, is this the Magomed Ankalaev show?
It has all the makings where it feels like that. Now, you just brought up a couple times, well, he wasn't otherworldly in this fight. He was victorious, but kind of human. But, will he come out with the same level of just sustained dominance as Islam Makhachev? Maybe not. Maybe he's a little bit more patient. Maybe he's a
definitely
little
more patient, yeah.
Maybe whatever, but there's that inevitability. It's tough. We're discounting Jan a bit, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was Jan's worst night in the Glover rematch and it happened and he's right back here, does he need to get out of character a little bit to win this? Because Jan can be very poised. Now, look, he went after it against Dom Reyes and chopped down that tree and hit him with fight-changing, devastating shots and took care of him. There's also times where Jan sometimes can play it too safe. You play it too safe against a chess master like Ankalaev, you're probably setting yourself up to fail. So if you're Team Blachowicz, you fell back into a vacant title shot here. You got to go for broke and stop this guy, don't you, Chuck? Polish power.
I would think so, only because is he 40 or is he 39? He's getting up there in age.
39.
I think
could be
that
wrong.
at some point, right, like if you want to regain that title, and his reign obviously wasn't very long, but if you want to get that, and this is a crazy gift from heaven basically for this guy to do it, he probably should bring it. I think he should try to sell out. This is probably if he loses a decision, he's not getting back there anyway.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So I think he should want to sell out at some point in this fight and go for broke, you know what I mean? If he has to. We'll see how it kind of plays out, but if it comes down to it and he needs to like throw down, I think he should,
Luke, what is this development of the title going vacant? Yeah, we did get a 5-star fight in Jiri versus Glover gave us
Easy.
And hopefully we get a Yeezy Glover rematch. But in the post John Jones giving up the title, we're coming up on 3 years since the last time John Jones fought, February of 2020 against Dom Reyes. He gave up the title shortly after that. 3 years into the post-John Jones era at 205 in the UFC.
There's still no stability.
How do you describe where we're at?
Instability.
It was almost like before John Jones, right? Like there was a new champion.
It's like when a major drug kingpin dies, and all the warring gangs are. There's now a free. I'm being serious. I'm not trying to make any direct reference to John's personal life, but I'm saying, like, you ever seen these places where, like, when Pablo Escobar died, or when they captured El Chapo, then there's no one figure that controls the rest of them, and there's just these warring factions left and right. I feel like it's been that. Yeah. It's been a little bit of warring factions, which is why Ankalaev, you wonder, is like, not is he the heir to John Jones? I don't think that's quite right, but is he a stabilizing force at the championship level at 205? He might be.
Right.
He might be. Once he gets it, it's not like you look down the horizon, you're like, who's going to take that from him? It's not obvious.
It's funny how history, like you go through history and you have to see it play out, but you could actually start to point out that John Jones's reign is more impressive than about anything, given that it was like that beforehand. Machida, Hua, Rashad Evans, all the guys that had it. It was just kind of a
rampage.
Yeah, rampage. It went
they
on
all gave it. They all had no title defenses and handed off to each other until John walked in.
And then he comes and he's there, and now we're having it again. Yeah, it's a crazy testament to how good he is.
All right. Well, we could spend all day talking about this main event, but we'll have to get to other.
Well, I want to real quick to close. We said, hey, great move by everybody accepting and making it happen. Do you look at Glover and say you missed an opportunity, or in the long run, him making that stand?
How old is Glover? Our age, 42, 43?
He's old as shit, yeah.
Glover's old as fuck. Dude, here's what he's old as fuck. For an athlete, he's old as fuck. All right? He knows himself.
Yeah.
If there is anything Glover knows at this point, it is...
It's smart, right?
Who am I, and what do I have to do to win? And also, like... Glover's like, I'm not doing this bullshit anymore, Yeah. I'm not taking these short notice fights. Fuck off.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And whether it's the right call or the wrong call, it all depends on how things go. But you gotta stand up for what you not just you believe in, but like who you are at this point. I'm sure he made the right call, at least for himself.
He's got his gym flourishing. Just got Alex Pereira up there, like the title. You know what I mean?
You're not going to beat Ankalaev on short notice, dude. You're not. You're just not.
I think that's really what it comes down to. He's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
So
and experienced.
Is Khabib on his way to winning Coach of the Year? Because I like Glover as a good coach. I like Team Fedor had a good year.
Team Fedor had a pretty good year, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really put.
I mean, is Glover considered the brains of this? Who's the brains fully of Glover to share?
Well, they got kind of blasted on that card. It was Turman Wellington.
Yeah, Turman lost. Reyes lost.
Wellington Turman.
Wellington Turman, and then Dominic Reyes, who spent his camp there, got blasted. So
no, but is Glover the chief strategist behind the scenes, or is it a partnership with him and Feliz? Like, how do we look at that? Same thing I ask about, to be fair, same thing I ask about Khabib, who stepped into the role that his late father had, but also has Javier Mendez and AKA and that full team by his side. So it's like you never know how do you juggle out the sharing the blame and sharing the credit, you know?
I think you just take as much credit as you can, and then when shit goes bad, you try to get rid of that. You know, you don't take no responsibility. That's how you roll.
Connecticut sucks as well.
Shorthand for Connecticut
Take
sucks.
away from this conversation. All right, let's move on.
He wouldn't last a week where we come from, you know?
Yes.
Why? Because I'd have meth shoved in my face? Probably.
There's a meth problem out there, I'm not going to lie.
There's a meth problem in D.C. too. Yeah. But all right, let's talk about the co-main event, which is an interesting one for very different reasons.
I don't know if I even call this a co-main event. I'm not here to shit on this card.
Okay.
I like a lot of what this card offers, but this is not a co-main event.
Yeah, it's a fine fight.
It's the main event? Is that what you're saying?
It's another fight on the card.
Here's what I would say. It's a fight that's in the co-main event position.
Yes.
Right? Paddy
semantics.
Pimblett is back, taking on this time an escalation, I do believe, I think a fair one, in Jared Gordon. Now, that's my opinion.
Yes.
So let me go to you first, Chuck. My opinion is this is the right step up for him. And people forget, like, Paddy's got over 20 fights. Like, it's kind of time to start pushing him a little bit. The guys they were giving him early, he was just pounding on. Jordan Levitt was a decent step up and wasn't enough. Fair enough. Jared Gordon seems like an even better version.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Third Rock from the Sun.
He was shitty as the Robin in the Batman movie, though.
True, but 500 Days of Summer with that snack. All right, keep going. Sorry. I mean, she was kind of.
Were you about to describe a female as a snack?
Yeah, then I realized that was the wrong door to enter. You ever like be at a party at UConn and you're like willing to get high and stuff, but then you open the door and there's like rock in there and football players, not Dwayne Johnson. I mean, like, you know, and you're like, okay, I don't go to a party at this level, guys. You know, and they give you that grunt anyway. You got to close the door fast. You're like, I didn't even know that room was there. I thought that was the bathroom. You know, it turns out like no, that's where.
It's a long way for like we just went down the biggest rabbit hole of the show so far. That's historic.
A good step up for Paddy Pimblett.
I think so, man. I mean, he has been around a little bit. You're not going to find a lot of B-roll on the guy because the bottom line is I think his first fight was his only finish in a victory.
Talking about Jared Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he finished off Levitt as well.
No, I'm talking about Gordon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's just been he's been a guy he's a grinder. He's gonna give you a good fight. I think in some ways that's
he's won 4 of his last 5.
He has.
Yeah.
So this ain't Aaron Blanchfield versus Molly Meatball in terms of the hype may get sliced here if you're not for real. This is another look great, survive in advance, continue the build of Paddy, I mean, toward the ultimate cash out eventually? Is that what this is?
I think so. I mean, I do think it's strategic to an extent. It could backfire. And if it does, it's going to be spectacularly backfiring because if Gordon wins it, like it's going to be a boring fight, don't you think? If he's able to kind of nullify and make the fight go the distance or something like that, that means we've got a boring fight, and that takes all the sheen off of this Paddy Pimblett.
How do you think, so tell me what you think, how is Jared Gordon going to fight?
I mean, I could see him just trying to nullify, just try to get through. Like early on, I think he's going to, like if you've watched any tape, and you know the dude is a showman. You know that Paddy's going to go out there. He wants to do it. He's all about the $50,000 bonus still. He's at that part of his career. He wants to just go out there and put on a show, get paid the bonus, all that stuff. So I think that if he's able to just survive, persevere, maybe be slower and come on late, mid-round or mid-fight and start to take it, that's probably his best path to win. I don't see him beat, like maybe I know that you watch these fights a lot more analytically than I do, but to me, that's what the smart play would be. Like, survive whatever he's going to bring early and then slowly take the fight, grind him down.
Luke puts the anal in analysis, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Luke, where are we in the Paddy experiment on the idea that...
Buttholes, dicks, and vaginas. The Brian Campbell experience.
That's great.
Oh, man.
Our cup runneth over.
If I could be candid with you for a second, Luke, where are we on the Paddy experiment? Meaning, when he comes on the scene, he looks overrated because he's so flashy and he talks a big game and he's got this Conor Jr. vibe going for him. Well, then he comes out and shows us a ground game and gets some finishes, and then you're wondering, hey man, maybe he's a little bit of a crazy like a fox. Maybe he's better than we actually realize. Where is he right now entering the Gordon matchup?
This will tell us a little bit more. I will tell you just what the tape shows. The tape shows that he does have a good ground game. It's a very good ground game. Like, he's real good. He is excellent at finding the back. He has excellent attacks and submission finishes and setups from the back. Like, he's a back specialist. I really would say that. That's really, and he's got more than just the back. He can do other things on the ground, but like, his ground game's legit. His wrestling is okay, and his striking is not great at all. And his striking defense is poor, I would actually say.
You can have not great striking, but have great finishing ability. Is he a legitimate finisher in your eyes, or no?
Yeah, I think he does. I think he can. I mean, the problem is, like, sometimes he takes, like, hellacious punches that, like, force him to regain his balance. Yeah. And so, that doesn't move the fight in the direction that you're looking. But I would say here's what I'll say about Paddy. Once he starts rolling downhill, the avalanche is on. Yeah. Right? Once he starts getting into that groove, guys have a real hard time catching up with it. And so to your point, survive, and then go.
I will say that he's got almost an intangible advantage in that he's been in big spots before he ever got to the UFC. This is just something that people, he's probably already the biggest star in Liverpool. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of fighting, at least that heading into the UFC, he'd already sold out big arenas. I think he believes he's meant for that sort of spotlight. So being thrust into a co-main event, that type of thing, I feel like he's going to handle it just fine. I don't really feel like he's going to. He's also won and lost a title. He's went through some dark, depressing times. Was it the Soren Bach?
Soren Bach,
the whole
Cage
thing.
Warriors, yep.
Yeah, and then he had that grappling match too, where people were like, "Dude, I think he might be now on the." You know the one I'm talking about. He lost, he got submitted in a grappling match, and there was just some.
But those don't mean it. I mean,
they don't mean much. But there was a moment in time, and he was nursing an injury, and I think he went through a lot of adversity already behind the scenes, because anybody who's just UFC centric didn't see all this, but he talks about it all the time. I just think it plays to his advantage. I think that if he's playing with house money right now a little bit, he knows how to use it. Like, he knows how to ride a hot streak, and I would expect he's going to try to keep that rolling in this fight. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to ever devolve into a guy who just fights to just get by. Like, he's going to want to go out there and finish. And I don't know. I mean, I just get the sense that he's big for the moment. Like, he's going to know how to handle the moment. Whereas Gordon, I'm not sure he's ever been in a fight this big before, because obviously we know who the A side of this is, and you're trying to take the guy's juice, which is hard to do. So I feel like there's going to be like an intangible.
Well, Gordon has fought much better fighters.
That is true.
Gordon fought Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, of course.
Significantly better fighter.
But there's something to that ability to rise in the moment, which may explain some of that McGregor magic, whereas there was that points where he would be winning fights in ways, 13 seconds overall, though, that you're like, no, I mean, he could be that good, but nobody saw this coming. Well, maybe he's just so great in the moment he can raise himself. I would agree that Paddy does have some of that.
I think so. I mean,
some of that Macness
and remember,
right?
he's
that's
fought,
a skill. That's not a random
in Vegas. It was at the Apex. He's not cut out for Apex. He still was able to put on a show. I think feeding off the energy. This was the first time in a real big arena in America like this. Where the Vegas crowd. I think he looks at himself as the main event. Like, he's going to go out there and have to perform.
He's the most popular fighter on this main card by a mile.
Oh yeah, I agree.
A mile.
I mean, look at that dog video, the dog poop video. You see that like viral. You know what I mean?
Old man Pimblett hates shit.
Viral.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question about Paddy's true potential here, because he's going to keep winning, and he should win this one, right? Should win this one.
Should win it.
I think so.
So if he's going to keep winning, inevitably we're going to be in the talk of, I don't want to call it a cash out moment, because when you say cash out, it means that someone's not going to win the big one. So what's the moment you can get them into the biggest fight? But in some ways, it is asking that question. Is his biggest fight going to end up being when he gets close enough to a title shot that the UFC makes it happen because of the brand? Or is it going to be where he gets so popular? Because, he says it himself a lot. He says, look, Conor's looking for a comeback opponent, him versus me. Conor and Paddy
doing all of that.
Could do sick numbers that people don't even realize. Will it end up being something like that before it'll be number one contender fight, or before it'll be title shot?
Man, I don't know. I do feel like, I don't know. You tell me, there is a little bit of a novelty feel to him. Like, it doesn't feel entirely like he's a real contender to me. It just feels like he's
he's not fighting anyone ranked.
Right, exactly.
I mean, he's not fighting anybody ranked.
Right.
And I'm not saying he's supposed to be. In fact, I think the UFC's done a really good job building him along.
Yeah.
But like people have to look at the larger picture here. He has a lot of experience on the international scene. He's had 4 fights in UFC. This will be his 4th, I think, something like that. And he fought guys that, for the most part, except for the last one and now this one, are really not even UFC material.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's like, dude, they're soft pedaling the shit out of him, which again, I want to be clear, I think is the right call, but it should also inform your judgment. Yeah, I don't know if he's got championship potential on this.
So I want to ask you, what are they holding him for? If they are soft pedaling, which they kind of are, is it to put him in there with an aging superstar? Is that is that his title fight?
Listen, I think there was one thing that I'll say this for the UFC, man. There was one thing they did with Conor McGregor that I thought was really smart. People don't remember this anymore, but there was a time when Conor was accused through UFC or whatever of, he's avoiding all the wrestlers in this division.
I know.
And the big one was,
Chad
at the time, Chad Mendes he eventually had to face because of the late notice thing. But the big one was Frankie Edgar.
Yep.
Yeah.
They wanted him to fight. All the fans were like, okay, this is great. You're fighting the Dennis Sievers of the world. You fight Frankie, he's going to fuck you up. And maybe at that time he would have, as a matter of fact. But what the UFC calculated on was a very smart bet. What they bet on was, okay, if he's good enough, then eventually he's going to get to a point where you just can't avoid these fights. They're going to just be there. But if we give him just enough time on this journey up the highway, if he continues to actually work in the gym and he actually gets better, then by the time he gets to the point where those fights are no longer unavoidable, he's going to win some of them anyway.
Right.
They're making some kind of a similar bet on Paddy. Let's give him as much time as we can, reasonably speaking, to see where he ceilings out, and he'll just get however much better he gets in that time. We're going to give him all of that, and then eventually he'll just be who he's.
Okay, I need a top-of-your-brain answer from both of you.
All right, here we go.
Imagine if Paddy wins this and the next move actually was break all glass, Conor Paddy at Croke Park. We're fucking going all in here. How many pay-per-view buys in 2023 and who wins? Top of your dome, go.
Conor smokes him. 1-5? 1-5? That's a 1-5.
I would say that's
1-5 in this day and age is.
Although, dude, Conor looks like he's going to be fighting Ankalaev at this point. I mean, that motherfucker is. I showed you the pictures, and we were at lunch today.
Yeah, he's fucking jacked.
Dude, he looks yoked out of his
What is
mind.
he walking around? I don't even know, man.
Got to be 200.
You're right, though. I've seen the photos.
I guarantee.
I'm way more than 200. Didn't he say he's 265? Or was he just talking
he's
shit?
not 265. Dude, he's not 265. But 215.
He's got that creatine puff that we used to have around 98,
215
99.
and around that's probably in play.
Damn.
Yeah.
Only he's not taking creatine. He's taking the good stuff.
Yeah, good for him. I ain't mad at him. That's
Now,
awesome.
what role will he play in this new Roadhouse? What's he playing? Like the Sam Elliott role, you
Do
think?
you think I care?
Sam
Because I
Elliott.
don't.
Are you into that doctor that Swayze bagged in Roadhouse, in the original Roadhouse?
Yes, I am. But it's been a little bit.
He's an honest man. You know what I'm saying?
It's been
He's a dry, honest
a
man.
minute since I've seen that.
Disgusting pig.
Why?
I just haven't seen that movie in so long. I can't even remember
I
who
can't
it was.
remember it either.
Chuck, how first of all, how do you talk to an angel, and how do you hold her close to where you are? You know,
We're at that portion of the show already. I thought we were still having a serious discussion.
Yeah, I guess the gummies kicked in.
just trying to add a little entertainment.
But to answer your question, McGregor wins that fight easily. I think still. I think
that'd be a spectacle, and I'm into making spectacles. So
I don't know beyond this. This is like you mentioned. It's the appropriate escalation from where he was. Now, what does that mean for his next fight? I still feel like he should fight a guy that he can showcase. Why would you mess with that? Especially because they do have an England card planned in March, I think, something like that, or April. I forget what it is, but he could be on that. Although if you ask him, he says he's done with all of that. He's only doing pay-per-views from this point on. Like,
here they are.
It. Yeah, that's what, and I believe him. If he goes through this, if he's a pay-per-view draw, those names then have to escalate in a way.
That's the other part. Now you got to start fighting.
Well, you're either fighting a top 7 lightweight who you have a chance of getting solved, or you're fighting an aging name. Which one's it going to be first? That's really the rule.
I would bet on an aging name.
Okay.
Somebody like that. Would you say so? A guy that they pretty sure that it would be evenly matched at that point. You know what I mean?
old ass RDA still beats him.
Probably, but RDA's up at no, they're not going to do RDA. It's going to be someone a little more plus like again, where are Paddy's strengths? They are in the ground. Yeah, I don't know if that one really works. It'd have to be someone a little bit more shop worn, although I guess we'll find out. By the time this comes out, we'll know. But as we record this today, we'll see. Nevertheless, how big is a win here? Because to your point, the name isn't going to really blow up the thing, but he has a way of turning a mundane kind of situation and making it just a fucking fiesta.
Sure, and I think that 19,000, 20,000 people at T-Mobile, this is a big moment for him because we've seen him in England. Of course, that's infectious. You see that kind of crowd, the way they're reacting to their guy. But this is now America, and I feel like he's going to get the same thing, So
will Molly be allowed to just...
The whole Barstool thing and stuff.
Well, I was going to ask you, if Molly, after this loss to Blanchfield, is she going to be allowed to run wild and put Paddy on her shoulders, or are they going to be like, they're going to mute her out a little bit?
That's a good question. She was clearly affected by not having him there at Madison Square Garden, so... They are two peas in a pod.
I don't think him not being there had fuck all to do with it.
You think it was crucifix regardless?
Yeah, she ran into
just that good. Then?
She ran into a fucking bulldozer. That was
our money line hammer of the month.
Yeah, dude. Let me just tell you, that was. I can't believe that Portnoy put a bet that big. It's like, dude, Molly's a good fighter.
Wait, what was his bet? I don't even.
10 grand.
10 grand
to win 40 grand.
It's like, dude, you might as well just set the shit on fire.
I know,
like,
well, he can do that. I guess.
He could, fine, but like for entertainment value, it would have been better. I was like, dude, that was never going to go any other way than the way it went.
That was a brutal beatdown.
Okay, look, we're just completely underplaying the fact that Jared Gordon could win this fight. Hello, it could very much happen. Hard to say what will happen in his career because I think that there is some level of star attainability where there's probably not going to be there. Nevertheless, it would be by far the biggest win of his career. And I'll tell you what, he had a lot of hype coming as this guy who like overcame addiction. And he had some nice wins early on. And he's been somewhat forgotten a little bit by, I think, the fan base.
Yeah.
What does a win do for him?
It makes him a hated figure in the UFC, Like, you know
think
what I mean?
so?
Yeah, but in a weird way, I think it would. Especially, let's just say that he's just,
what, to the UFC brass?
30-27. No, just to the fan base, because you know what it's like. You have and I'm being sort of facetious, but at the same time, I think that it's an unenviable task to say, go fight Paddy Pimblett right when he's supposed to be making his run. We're debuting him out in Vegas in front of this big crowd, he's now the co-main event, and then you go beat him. That's the thing. It'd be like Liz Carmouche blowing up Ronda Rousey right out of the gate or something. You're like, well...
Via face crank.
You know what I mean? Everything we were trying to build, you just destroyed. I think there'd be some mixed feelings about that. But at the same time, that's still not a bad thing, like, for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's still going to be a big win for him. I just think that you tear down a lot of the fun that's supposed to be happening.
Kind of like when Mike Jackson was like riding cowboy in the back of CM Punk. It's like, the UFC was like, all right, dude. No. He ended up getting another shot though, but he got sent.
Kind of like that, actually, somewhat something like that. I don't know if Mike Jackson. I think people are just like, wow, that was pathetic. Everything we just watched, but
wow,
yeah,
fucking old bitter ass.
Yeah.
Bitter ass Iceman in here. This was terrible.
Chuck, what's your real full name again? It's Majestic. What is it?
George Charles Mindenhall IV.
Wow, dude, that is. Do you? I mean,
wow.
Yeah. That's a white name.
Does your family have a long history of peyote in the Rocky Mountains?
Peyote.
Did your family slaughter a bunch of Native Americans?
God,
not personally.
Wow.
Well, I mean, did you hear his name? I mean, it's like Lord George the Fifth Esquire.
We do twirl our.
All right, let's talk about some of the other fights on this card because, as you indicated, there's no real one shining star. There's a few interesting points.
Will Robbie Lawler versus Santiago Ponzinibbio give us the old guy action we're craving, or will it be the sad version of that?
Oh, it's going to be.
This is just like
it's going to be sad as balls.
Well, it's similar, right, to the International Fight Week. It was Lawler and Barberina, right? Like for the swing bout.
It was either Barberina or the Diaz one. I forget at this point. I want to make a point here about Robbie Lawler. I saw this in thinking about this thing we were going to shoot. Listen to Robbie Lawler's resume. Now, if I had to ask you, what was the last guy he beat who's not retired, you would say, well, Nick Diaz. But Nick Diaz had been retired.
Right.
He had come out of retirement to fight him, should have maybe stayed in retirement. So if you discount that before that, how's it? Ready for this? Neil Magny, loss. Colby Covington, loss. Ben Askren, loss. Rafael dos Anjos, loss. Fought Donald Cerrone, who's now retired. Fought Tyron Woodley, who's now retired, at least from MMA. Fought Carlos Condit, won, but retired. Fought Rory McDonald, won, but he's retired.
Johnny Hendricks,
who's retired. Matt Brown. Matt Brown is basically the last name, which, by the way,
that's only because he's immortal.
All right.
Okay, that one was good. That's a dad joke, but that was
a
good.
while, yeah.
July of 2014. Dude.
Wow.
I don't think he should be fighting. Can I just say it out loud? I don't think he should be fighting.
You can.
He's been fighting. He's been fucking fighting. Ready for this? Pro debut that predated 9/11.
And
I mean, you got to be
and those
shitting
sparring
me.
wars in Bettendorf, dude, they didn't F around back in the day.
I was going to say,
And the weight cutting, too.
yeah, you just think back to the Bettendorf, the whole thing. Like the guys who were fighting and
Strike Force Robbie was in wars. Hey, guess what? UFC Robbie was in
Dude,
wars
you mentioned Matt Brown.
Sorry, he has 3 fights that predate 9/11.
Wow.
3 of them.
You mentioned Matt Brown. It was Matt Brown. There was Hendricks, McDonald, and Condit.
Yeah.
That was the most brutal 4-fight stretch for everybody involved.
Oh.
And he was the disher out of that punishment, and he accepted a lot of it. But I mean, they were all crazy fights. Altered that division.
Altered those guys.
All of them.
McDonald never came out of the same.
I know.
Condit didn't come out
All
the
of those
same.
guys.
And
It's
Lawler didn't come out the same.
Fascinating they're still going, but I agree with
Were
you.
any of those
There's a point
those
where you're like,
never the
ugh.
same because of USADA, or was that all just the damage?
Probably some USADA had to do with it. And also, like, to the point that I made earlier, like, if you just listen to the names that I read, he wasn't fighting chumps. Woodley, Dos Anjos, Askren, Colby. And the Askren fight was weird because
was
of how
really weird.
But it was fun.
adjudicated.
Oh my God.
And then,
Thought he won.
But like losing to Neil Magny was like, eh. And then here's the big one. He lost to Brian Barberena, who is a good fighter, but like the very best version of Lawler would have fucking torched that guy.
But guess what? That version's not coming through this door. It's Brian Barberetta's time.
Yeah, that's a thing you're saying.
It would have been a
Those are
good
words.
interview. It would have been a decent interview. It would have been decent.
Probably not. But the point I'm trying to make is, dude, Robbie Lawler is, I mean, I don't know what.
Is he at that point where they're like, okay, if you don't win this, it's time?
I don't think that they.
type of thing?
Yeah, I don't think that they want him to. Like, dude, Dana White never wants to get up there. In Dana's defense,
Yeah,
he never wants to get up there in the press conference and be like, "I think my man should retire." He doesn't want to do that, but he will if he has to.
Right.
You know.
Would you say Robbie has unfinished business when you look at his tramp stamp? It looks incomplete, correct? Seriously. Robbie's tattoo coming out of his ass crack. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's not coming out of his ass crack.
No, but doesn't it always look like he was like he
has
left the chair
he's got
because?
some kind of like Asian calligraphy. I don't know
But it was almost like, I'm going to come back in a couple months when I save up money.
I'll
He
pay
just
attention
never-
during this next fight.
He just never came back to the chair. It seems
Yeah.
like, right? Or is that the style?
I don't know what kind of tattoo experience he had that went.
I'd love to get him on the couch. RSD, Robbie Lawler.
God.
He's got stories about warfare.
He ain't gonna tell you, fuck Ola.
I mean, he's one of the worst interviews on.
Right,
Yeah.
but I take
On
it on
purpose,
as a
though.
challenge,
Yeah.
though.
On purpose.
You know?
Yeah,
He's
okay.
purposely.
All right. You can pry that
I told
up.
you, like when I did I worked briefly for this promotion at the time, was called UWC Ultimate Warrior Challenge. Terrible name.
Like the
And,
pro wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior?
No, they just were trying to. Everyone was trying to copy UFC without copying UFC.
Yeah.
It was a Mid-Atlantic promotion. They did have some big fights, but they had this was at their relative, not peak, but pretty close to it. They had Hughes and Lawler show up as like the guest
Yeah.
people or whatever, and they came to the weigh-ins, and Lawler fell asleep on the desk.
Oh,
like and then we were in a hotel room, and there was like the celebrity
He did that
table,
at a press
and he
conference,
literally just fell right asleep. Yeah.
remember he did that at a press conference at
Strike Force, yeah. He
that's
did the
right.
exact same shit. I was
That's
like, wow,
hilarious.
my
He came to ESPN one time, and Okamoto and I interviewed him, and it was a typical Robbie interview. Brett interviewed him, and I think I was, helping out. But afterwards, you sit and chat with Robbie for like a half hour. Dude, he could not care less about the other parts of this game that don't involve getting in the cage and
Yeah.
and
I
like.
know.
But I mean, like. Out of anyone I've ever met in the history of combat sports, there's a lot of people that just don't care about media or don't care about fame, or they're in it for just the Bushido. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of cats. Man, he couldn't give a fuck about trash talk, about is he getting the next title shot, about is there anyone left in your career that you haven't fought that you want to. All that is
that's
like,
true.
fuck, I don't care. I'm showing up when they tell me to, and I'm competing. Like, he's literally like the
He's been like
oldest
that. That
of
Askren
old
one, you remember
school.
how he handled that Askren loss just like, oh, whatever, we'll do it again. Like a lot of people wanted outrage from him and and he was just like,
When
no,
he
it's
came
just the way
back
it
to
is.
the UFC for the final chapter he had there, and it was the Koscheck fight that he was in. That was the one that was his reintroduction post Strike Force. He did have a little bit more fire.
Yeah.
Which you could understand is a different stage of his career, but he had a certain kind of intensity. And like, think about the intensity he had in the Condit fight or the intensity he had in the McDonald fight. I feel like those days are long gone.
Oh, yeah.
Long
I think so.
gone.
So, I mean, old Ponzinibbio should beat him.
Who?
Santiago Old Ponzinibbio, he should beat him. But he's old
here's
too.
the thing. Ponzinibbio had 2 years off.
And leg injuries.
And he hasn't really
has not looked great. He has lost 3 of 4 since his return.
Couple of split decisions.
Yes, so
Very
couple of
close,
them are tight. Couple of them are tight.
I bet you his DMs are out of control.
Ponzinibbio's?
Yeah.
Why?
Very handsome man, comes from a different lifestyle and culture. I bet you it's like Uncle Pepe all over again.
I don't know about his Uncle Pepe's DMs, but yeah, he's
Like Pepe doesn't use technology to slang.
he's just plowing them. You call him Mr. Plow.
Oh, wow.
Senor Plow.
I like this.
Every now
Hey,
and
Chuck,
again, you do like kind of limbo down to his level. Like,
Well, he just dragged.
Chuck, we should get you in one of these fantastic
those
Mr.
are nice,
Plow
man.
jackets
Those are
right
very
here.
nice. I was just noticing all that. Like,
Yeah.
this merch, man.
How do we feel about this fight? It's not really form. I mean, I'll say this.
Me, honestly,
It does-
reminds me of the Barberina fight. It was sort of like.
No, I disagree slightly. I
Well,
think-
Barberina is still young and vital, but this is anyway. Go ahead.
Well, only thing I was going to say was I think for Lawler it would be the best one he's had in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Diaz has a bigger name, but in terms of like the quality. But on the other hand, I actually think like this is fuck man for Pont. Like Lawler was champion. Lawler's going to go in the Hall of Fame. He might already be in for one of the fights at this point, the McDonald fight or whatever.
Yeah, but that doesn't count.
I understand, but I'm saying
All the
dude,
pressures
he's
on Ponzinibbio.
he's hit the highest level. This is all bonus time for Robbie
Right.
Lawler. Ponzinibbio still hasn't scratched that
Right.
itch, and he's still fucking trying.
Yeah, you're right.
This
about
is
that.
still way more important, I think, for Ponzinibbio,
Yeah.
given that reality.
Based on all that reality you just did of reading Robbie's recent run, like when was the last thing that we could actually consider a quality win from Robbie? When is the last quality win? Quality win.
Condit, probably.
well,
Not save your job win.
quality win would be the Condit win was.
That's a long freaking time
Quality.
ago.
that was a long time ago.
That's 2016.
Dude, you can't fight like that and then
2015?
fight very well afterwards. It's just the reality.
Would you
can't-
rather, if you were on a deserted island and they offered you a
Here we go.
115 pounder to spend
Here
your
we
time with,
go.
and you could watch one fight for the rest of your life, and the two offerings are Condit versus Robbie or Rory versus Robbie?
Oh, man.
There's really only one direction.
I
you
think
would
I
go.
think maybe we've talked about this off air. But you're of the Condit one.
Correct.
Okay. I personally, and I've talked about that. I think I think you're kind of repeating yourself, but I love the McDonald fight. But I think it's because there's that photo and there's that moment. I realize iconic in that sense. Like there was this moment where they're just staring each other down before that.
Yeah, the McDonald fight is more cinematic.
Yes.
In that sense.
Yeah.
It's gnarly as shit.
It is a gnarly fight. But I'd have to go back and watch the I remember being like blown away by that fight. So either one of those would be good.
Hey, no one talks anymore about the two Lawler-Hendricks fights. They didn't suck.
No, they were pretty good. Those were two, as Dana called them when they announced the fight after George dropped the title, gunfighters.
Yeah.
That's what they were. They were gunfighters. All right, we've been here for about an hour. There are some other fights on this card. Again, it's a weird card, but it's kind of good. But
Dude,
kind of
Darren Till referendum time.
all
This
right.
is a big
Darren
deal.
Till versus Dricus du Plessis, who since he came to the UFC has been undefeated.
But he throws caution of the win. He enters
He
into
certainly
shit.
does.
That's the whole
And by the
thing.
way, Darren Till, I saw he's down at Bang Tao MMA in Thailand with the Hickman brothers.
Yep.
So those guys are legit.
Has Till not fought since the bromance with Chimaev? Is that true? He has not fought since him and Chimaev became like...
I don't think he has.
I don't know if that intersects with the Whitaker fight or not.
I don't think he's fought since then, where that seemed to be like an opportunity for him to fully
he's
reset.
been- and like he always
needs
does, he
a
gets
reset
injured and everything
really
else.
bad. He needs a big win really bad. Is Duplessis, who showed us a lot to like, but some things to like, okay, let's see you prove that on another level. Is Duplessis good enough to go out there and fully solve Darren Till at this point?
I think he is.
He
but
shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's a weird one because obviously he's got a background in kickboxing, but if he's smart, he's mixing that up a little bit, right? He's kind of giving you a new wrinkle in a
lifts the
fight
bang
like
too
this.
much, bro.
But he does. That's the thing. That last fight, who was it against? His last fight, the Duplessis was at the ABC.
Tavares?
card. Yeah, he was getting chewed up, like just pieced up at times. But then he would just keep going and winging and throwing
Blitzing.
crazy stuff.
Just blitzing.
Yeah, blitzing
And
him.
doing this.
And eventually he overcomes
Yes.
and he wins. I'm not sure he'll get by with that with Darren Till. It's a tough fight.
Unless Darren Till is just not Darren Till anymore.
That is
or
true
what
too.
version of
I
him
think
we
that
thought.
that's kind of the real subtext. What is Darren Till like? Where is Darren Till at? Does it matter that he's in
He's running
Thailand
out of
doing
chances in terms of being a
100%.
true elite title contender.
It
right?
seems to me like right now when you talk about, I don't know where he's at. I don't know if he's in the rankings, but you couldn't.
I think he is. Yeah.
But if you were to take the top 15, most of those fights, you're probably picking the other guy against Darren Till at this point. He has a lot to prove. He was a guy with a lot of hype.
He does.
Who
I think
hasn't
he has
lived up to it, really.
one win since the disputed 5-round decision against against Thompson that set Till up to fight Woodley for the title. I believe his only win since then is a split decision over Gastelum. Is that true?
Yeah. His last finish was Cerrone, and that was 5-6 years, whatever. It was a long time ago.
More than that.
How do we put into words here? What went wrong from the moment he stepped in against Tyron Woodley until now? What went wrong? Was it too much hype too soon? What happened?
Yeah, he was. Dude, here's the thing. And this is why about Paddy Pimblett, I'm like, you don't want to be a hater and be like, oh, he's no good. No, he's good. He's on the ground. He's really good. But that's
actually a very good comparison.
Right, exactly. Dude, they're going to kill me for saying this, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth.
Is this like Anthony Smith saying John Jones is average?
No. which was also, even you and I were like,
you're like, John Jones is pretty fucking good, Anthony.
He's pretty fucking great.
His blink if you want us to edit that out.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to say. Listen, who are the best combat sports fans in the world? I would argue the Irish and the British, or the UK in general, right? I just can't. They're just amazing fans.
Yeah.
But one of the downsides to their fandom is that they also big up their own people so much that they big up a lot of people who are not ready for it and don't otherwise deserve it. Now, of course, in the case of Conor McGregor, he did, and probably didn't even get enough. Quite frankly, I mean, it's not that everyone they boost is no good. Hello, Leon Edwards is the welterweight champion of the world. But what I am saying is, there's a lot of other guys who they boost before they're ready. And because they're so fucking passionate. You got to love it, but you got to be careful about it. I think Till was a victim of that to a degree, to be honest with you.
And there were some, there were red flags. And then his early run, remember the Nicholas Dalby, where he's just kind of cruising, he gets in the third and starts getting hit, and all of a sudden it becomes a draw, and he's up 2 rounds to nothing. The only thing that could go wrong is either he gets knocked out or he loses the last round 10-8, and he did. So I felt like there's been some... you could look back as revisionist, but I'm like, it probably was a lot of hype. I think it was too much hype.
Oh, they wanted him to be the next McGregor. They wanted that bad, man.
No, they didn't want him to be the next McGregor. They wanted him to be, and I talked to people who work in the industry in the UK at high levels. They wanted him to be the next Michael Bisping.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted. They wanted him to pick up where Bisping left off. We need someone who from this country is the standard bearer for quality.
Liverpool.
Well, Michael Bisping wasn't from Liverpool, but I think
he's not a Scouser?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, no, I'm saying Till. Till's a Scouser.
Oh, Till's a Scouser. Yes. I'm sorry. And so is Paddy, obviously.
So is Mike Owens Media.
So, yes, he is. Shouts to Mike Owens Media. But I'm just saying, the British media, they were looking for that. It turned out that Leon Edwards was that guy.
Right.
But they were hoping it was Till.
They should pay attention to Arnold Allen more. He seems.
Arnold Allen's another guy who he's on his way. All right, we have just a few more minutes. Ilya Topuria, who I think has championship potential.
It's a great fight.
This is the best fight.
Taking on Bryce Mitchell. Now, Bryce Mitchell's got some weird ideas about the Earth's roundness and everything else.
He eats coffee grounds by the
Marines. But see, the Marines do that too. So that part didn't freak me out.
He lives in a trailer on acreage, and
what's wrong with that?
He's in touch with his roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's what he also is.
His roots run all the way.
He's real fucking good. He's real fucking good. Right? Bryce Mitchell is an excellent fighter.
He might be great.
Ilya Topuria, reminder to everyone, fought up a weight class so he can go to 155. And at 145, he put a guy I like very much, but he put Ryan Hall's lights out. Right? How do you size this one up? I got to tell you, this is I think the best fight.
I'm psyched on the
card. I knew you'd like this one. I mean, but that's the way I feel. It's the perfect sort of opener for this card. I also think this is the closest you get for that bang for your buck fight. If you're going to get it, you're like, okay, well, this fight is just fascinating on a lot of levels. It's crazy. I would say that, Topuria has been he's showing his hands. I think his last 3 fights have been knockouts. He's showing what he can do. But dude, if you go back before the UFC,
he's a black belt.
All submissions. So you get into that where Bryce Mitchell is sublime, what he's doing, his grappling, all these submissions.
His motor.
Yeah.
Right?
But then it gets really fascinating because you're like, this dude's no slouch on the ground.
It's you would think Bryce for MMA grappling might be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But Topuria is much more well-rounded.
Right, exactly.
So you're just not quite sure.
Who's going to dictate where?
What's
And I was
Bryce's
like,
best win up to this point? I'm trying to
Jansen Barboza win was nice.
Yeah.
That was
real nice.
That was an eye opener in that regard. Man, this is a great matchup for positioning. I want to see. I mean, Bryce may have to win this on his feet. He may have to step up that strike.
Which, by the way, he can do a little bit. That's the other part too. He's not totally outgunned there. I just don't think he's got the firepower.
Did they put your tweets up, on the UFC broadcast?
They do.
They never put yours. I was going to say, I thought I
me
seen
and
yours.
Ariel, they never put our tweets up.
I was going to say the guys that they hate.
Does that mean I'm more liked by the UFC than Luke Thomas?
more of a shill?
Dude, you're,
but like
you're way more liked by them.
I mean, I was the star of that Tai Chi Palace video.
But
we'll never let that go.
When Mitchell was fighting Charles Rosa, remember that fight? He was like submission attempt after submission attempt. One of the few times I got up there, and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen them actually put on the screen, because I said, Rosa is fielding more submissions than the fiction editor at the Paris Review.
Wow.
And they actually put that up there. Most of them are like, I score that one.
They probably had a quota for literary humor.
It's like Steve-O, this guy's great.
They put that one up there out of all of them.
Yeah, you get a Bronstetter 10-9 tweet, and then
I could literally say the UFC should, Dana White should be president of the United States of America, and they wouldn't put it up. Like, they're not.
Would you agree? I don't want to turn the page on Bryce Topuria too soon, but this prelim card, the middle five, right? The middle five fights on this card. Kind of hardcore teasers in there.
Quickly, what stands out to you?
I'm trying to remember the 5 fights, but I like them all.
Rosenstrike.
Let's talk about this. So
Chris
the
Dawkins
feature
versus
about
Jair Rosenstrike is the main event of the prelims.
that's a banger between
That
two
is a
guys,
banger.
Dawkins and Rosenstruck, who both
your
need a
point.
win.
Yeah.
Big time. They're both
Chris
going to throw
Curtis.
hands to get there.
Raul Rosas Jr. taking on
So
Jay
that's
Perrin.
an important
That's the
topic, but what you were mentioning, Chris Curtis against Numanza, Joaquin
yeah.
Buckley in that opener, Luke.
That's
we're going to see some hands and kicks being thrown in that one.
Yeah,
I
that's a
can't
great
wait.
one. Two guys who can slug it out. Two guys who've been around the game for a while. Two guys about evenly sized, I would say, roughly. I'm not in the same weight class, but I'm saying inside the weight class.
There's a bunch of sleepers. Another one,
Edmund Shabazian taking on Dalke Lungiambula.
3-fight losing skid for Shabazian. It's shit or get off, right?
Yeah,
it's
that is
time.
And Dalke Lungiambula, I'm going to say I would give the award to greatest traps in MMA. I mean, that man's trapezius muscles.
Oh, wow.
They reach the sky. They're unbelievable.
Dude,
that's
here,
my
are we
endorsement. You
talking
pay
enough?
attention to this shit.
Separate from the man's traps, are we talking enough that for Edmund, and is he still with Coach Edmund?
Well, I was going to say that was kind of his re-entry back into the spotlight, right? Like Tarverdian, he kind of had Shabazian, and it was like, okay, here we go again.
He hit
Maybe there's
Ronda as
something
his
to it. But
manager
now
for a
he's
bit.
hit another snag. It is his true.
But he moved to Las Vegas.
Okay, it's time. It is time for him to come out and win and put this. Because look, he's a great one-round fighter, but it's the way that he's imploded in the second and third rounds. With stamina, but in some other ways too. That just
His wrestling has looked quite deficient.
he's got to come up and show us.
When he can box and use his hand speed, he's great.
All right, let's talk about the other guy, the Contender Series
Raul Rosas
graduate,
Jr.
17 years old still, making the UFC. This was supposed to
he
be
released
Bo
this?
Nickel's UFC
He might be
debut
18 by now.
Okay.
on this card. Bo Nickel got injured. We're going to have to wait on that. But this still feels meaningful. Raul Rosas Jr., 17 years old. Who's he fighting?
Jay Perrin, who has 2 fights in the UFC, he's lost them both.
Chuck, the obligatory, how freaking good is Raul Rosas Jr.? I mean, is he still in high school? What are we doing here?
It's unique. This is a unique thing. I think that this is one of the few times where we're discussing a fighter being very young in this way. Usually when we're talking about a young guy, it's like John Jones who's making a run to be the youngest champion or something like that. This is uncharted
Does he have armpit
territory.
hair?
Most guys, I mean, that's why like guys can't leap from high school football into the NFL. It's like you got to grow into your body and all that stuff.
Your man strength.
Yeah, but it's bizarre to actually be contemplating.
Luke is
this guy
of the
who's
belief-
17 or was 17 at the time when he broke.
Look,
through.
you've been very, not against Rosas himself, but against the idea of a high schooler.
Dude, a
sliding right
17-year-old
in.
person, unless they are the prodigy of all prodigies,
So unless they're Pico when he was 17.
not even him. Not even him. Unless you are far beyond that, you are not fucking ready for
Right.
the UFC.
That's
And
kind of
let me say this too. You do not know that you are not ready. It is impossible for your 17-year-old mind to contemplate that. And I'm telling you, there's going to be a 25-year-old guy, if they don't match him right, which they might, but if they don't match him right, he's going to get fucked.
You know how we fix this?
yeah.
Get Mick Maynard and Freddie Adu on the phone together. That's how we fix it.
Footwork of Freddie Adu. Jessa said that.
I mean, Freddie Adu, he just took what they
Also,
offered
Billy
him,
Quarantillo,
but-
Alexander Hernandez is on this card
Luke,
too.
Freddie
That's not
Adu, he's a DC guy in the MLS, right? They just send
He
him.
hasn't been a DC guy in the MLS maybe since the 90s. I don't
That's the
remember.
connection to bring you back in. I mean, was that his fault in the long run, Luke?
He was overrated as shit, yeah. And MLS was trying to find a star.
So what does Rosas do? He's got to come out and look spectacular. That's asking a lot of a high school kid, right?
I don't know if he's in high school anymore. I think he should win this contest. I mean, again, we go back to the Paddy Pimblett thing.
If he's 18, he
Rosas has like great cardio. He's got ridiculous aggression, which I think at this level will reward him. Over time, it may not, but at this stage, it will. And he's got great grappling and attacks from the back. He's got great.
When I was 17, Luke, I could not be trusted with anything.
I mean, you're doing.
I can't trust you with anything now.
Your level of thinking that you're invincible at those ages is ridiculous.
Dude, it's impossible to explain to an in-shape, strong, like fucking young buck 17-year-old guy about anything other than in their own invincibility. It is impossible to explain that to them.
So true.
So when they say things like "I'm ready for the UFC," it's like, dude, you don't even know how to answer that question.
Did you run across any of those types of mentalities in the Marines?
Yeah, fucking dude. And they were again, Raul Rosas.
Bunch of frat boys.
People are like, "What's your long-term prediction for Raul Rosas Jr.?" I don't know. I don't know how they're going to match
Looks
him.
like
I don't know.
Join a frat, find yourself.
Hold on, dude. For a guy who went to community college and then failed out after trying to major,
I don't know if it was failed out.
Failed out after trying to major in bedpan technology.
I don't know if it was failed.
You got a lot of opinions for someone who did it. You got a lot of opinions for someone who actually did it well.
I did accept a full-time job in the industry when I left school. I mean, I was making $11 an hour, but you can't really brag about that.
I'm just saying, I'm not making a long-term prediction for Rosas Jr. It's far too early. I don't know. What I am saying is the amount of peril he has invited by going to the UFC this early is extraordinary, and I think not smart.
And if he loses badly, even on this fight,
Well, here's the thing. If he loses badly, you can say, well, the guy's 17.
Right.
I don't worry about that. What I worry about is a loss, yes, but like it takes a little bit of a beating. Like, what if he gets like fucked up a little bit? It's a lot easier for a 25-year-old guy who's got a little bit of life centering versus a 17-year-old kid,
He might not be laid. He's got a lot of life to live.
Chuck, why don't you go blow him? How about that?
I mean, could we edit that part out? Chuck, he mentioned a sneaky banger in the featured Facebook preview.
Yeah, this is the last one. We got to get going.
Is Billy Q coming or going? We love Billy Q.
No, the question is Alexander Hernandez coming or going?
One of those early pandemic know me now Billy Q guys.
Dude,
and
Hernandez's first two wins in the UFC, he stopped OAM, who just won a PFL title, and he knocked out with one punch Beneil Dariush. Those were his first two fights.
Some shit against Dad.
Called him day drinking Don against Cerrone.
My question to you is: Billy Q fought his ass off against Burgos, came up empty, but he is hungry to make noise at the 145. Is this possible?
I mean, I need to see it, but at the same time, the dude brings it, man, every single time. So I don't know. It sucks to see guys like that who do have good fights,
who are also fun to talk to.
Low. Yeah, they're fun to talk to. The guy is just a fighter, man. He's just.
I think he's a new dad too, Billy Q. So he's gonna have that extra motivation.
That's a fun fight, though, man.
That's what I'm saying. The card is weird and disorganized.
Yeah,
but there's some decent things along. Actually, some really good parts along the way as well. Yeah. All right, Chuck. We got to get out of here. Why don't you tell us how the folks can find your shit?
You can go to themyth.com, the MITH, myth.com. That's where I'm writing. Yes, great hats for sale over there. And just my Twitter handle, which is @Chuck Mindenhall. That's pretty much it.
You
I'm at the Ringer. I do the
also,
Ringer
if you want Brian Campbell stuff, you can go to clownpenis.fart.
I mean, Chuck, you are pulling off remember when Ravishing Rick Rude was on Nitro and Raw on the same night because of how things worked with the pre-taping, and then he signed the secret contract and he left. You are on Ariel's show sometimes the same day you're on our show. How does this work?
A little incestuous, but I think
by the way, I don't care about this. Only he cares.
You're having sex with the church and the state. You know what I mean?
What's been fun is
we the state or the church?
Spotify's doing they're showing what you listen to, and a lot of I keep seeing the same thing where people are showing the podcast that they watch. One of them is Morning Kombat, and the other one is always
MMA Hour.
Yeah, the MMA Hour, but the Ringer MMA show is appearing. Okay. So it's pretty funny to have both.
That just means that you're
secret ingredient.
You're a wanted man right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Your services are greatly respected across the industry, including on this couch.
Wanted or a desperate man? It's one of those two things, man.
There's a thin line between them.
Yes.
Thin line between them. Okay.
Chuck, if things ever go sour between us and we have not had the best day as a partnership, okay?
You guys are always right on the brink when we do this show. Right on the brink. Stay by
your phone, Chuck. Stay.
Most of the time, I say I want to kill him and I don't. Today, I legitimately want to kill him.
Well, good luck, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, was the reaction worthy of the crime? You can argue.
It was.
You can certainly argue against that. Yeah.
But that is it for us.
Was I paying for other people's sins?
At least he was blowing up the commode, not you.
That's true.
That's right. December 10th. It'll be the last pay-per-view of the year for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Magomed Ankalaev takes on Jan Blachowicz.
Chuck, you got any good
UFC
stories on the way
light
out?
Heavyweight title. We have to get going. I have a train to catch. I really do.
Got to train.
I have to go get it. I have to go get it.
Does that train involve the Marines off hours? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about?
He is going to kill you.
Yeah, it's
now you're poking a bear.
all right. That's a different kind of train. I'm not trying to catch that one anymore. All right.
I tried to catch that PED. That
We have
STD.
to, good joke there, stupid. All right, we have to get out of here. That's Brian Campbell. That's the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. I'm Luke Thomas. Until next time, enjoy the fights.